I've certainly done worse, haven't I? And of course, that's the note I'm going to start the episode on. On this episode of the Osint Bunker, I admit to my past crimes and indecencies.
Exposed.
You're not getting many people, but you're getting big revelations. So welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of the Osint Bunker with Kyle Glenn, myself, Osinttechnical, and Brian, who does some great plane tracking stuff over both on the UK Defense Journal, or UK Defense Community Discord server, and Mata Osint. Excited to see you both here. We have a lot to talk about this week. A lot. Of course, we ended up delaying our podcast by a couple of days, and frankly, half of Eastern Europe decides to do dramatic things.
No, definitely. And I will say this before we start, I've double checked. It's episode 6. It's episode
Oh yeah, 7. I was about to say as well.
Well, I'm gonna have to
We're one ahead.
the heck out of that one, or not bother and just have it as a gaff. Yeah, I'll fix that definitely. That's a promise I can make.
Sounds good. Oh, glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Basically, like Europe has just decided to, again, kind of heat up quite significantly over the last. I mean, when are we saying this last kind of Ukrainian escalations happened? Over the last 6 weeks, month to 6 weeks, it's really started to escalate again, and even more so over the last, I'd say, 7 to 10 days. It's kind of following on from what we saw back in March, April this year, when we've seen a lot of Russian movement of troops and equipment towards the Ukrainian border. And of course, nothing really came of that. There was a lot of panic. There was a lot of concern that Russia was going to make a move around that time. And nothing really happened. There was a slight uptick in fighting. Quite a significant amount of Ukrainian soldiers died. I believe I was looking the other day, I think it was 20 or 25 soldiers died in the first 3 months of 2021 compared to, I think it was about the same number in all of 2020. So there was quite a significant uptick of fighting at the start of the year. But nothing really happened. There was no attempts to advance. There was no real escalations. It was just a kind of slight uptick in fighting. And then things kind of died down a little bit over the summer, which was unusual. You know, you see a lot of times in wars over the summer, spring and summer is when things start to heat up rather than kind of de-escalate, but things did slightly de-escalate, leading up to, I'd say probably, well, we'll say October. We'll say like October and November, things have started to heat up again. We've seen a lot more troops moving in, a lot more equipment, not as many videos as back in March and April. It seems one of two things in my opinion: either Russia had got their OPSEC up to code, or they just wanted them to be seen in March and April, and it was almost part of the whole kind of threatening. They wanted people to film the tanks. They wanted people to film the trains. They were happy to allow that to get leaked as such. But yeah, no, it seems like the build up this time is a lot more almost insidious. It's been done very quietly. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think or what you guys have been seeing on your end.
We actually haven't really seen, as you mentioned, that much movement, at least posted publicly, whereas normally you would sort of expect more of that published information. Of course, on the web you would expect more videos to come out, you would expect more eyewitness accounts, and we sort of aren't seeing as much as we did back in the spring of 2021, which was frankly the amount of troops and equipment being moved into the area was massive. We saw additionally stuff that backed up the movement of Russian supplies and Russian equipment, so rescheduling of trains, the clearance of leaves, and large exercises announced. We're sort of not seeing that this time as much. But on the other hand, we're also seeing the Ukrainian government, the U.S. government, we're seeing a lot of different governmental bodies who, I mean, I'm assuming have better intel than we do, getting much more in arms about this and being much more proactive in complaining. So that's something I guess we have to balance, and it's really hard to gauge what the actual truth of the situation is.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, you saw a lot of videos in the past, stuff moving around, and now there's nothing in terms of like actual evidence, but there's just a lot of words going around, like, oh, they're building up massive amounts of troops. But we have nothing that really, except for the actual intelligence community, that indicates that they have actually seen anything in relation to the actual build-up along the border.
Yeah, and again, like the really unusual thing again is it the US just flat out coming and saying they're expecting Russia to be or to potentially launch an invasion or at least something to happen before was it like February next year? No,
Well, there were two.
I just don't know.
There was a leaked report that indicated that Russia intended to invade Ukraine in the upcoming months, and then the Ukrainians leaked
Hmm.
or just released a lot of details, including graphics that they had posted that indicated that Russia planned to mount a large offensive in either January or February. And the graphics they released outlined and identified specific Russian units that had been building up in the area, forces, expected disposition of said
Hmm.
forces, and expected movements as well. So and that came directly from the Ukrainian government, which I'm assuming also includes information that was gained from American sources, because as we all know, the U.S. Air Force and of course the Royal Air Force as well have been flying a number of intelligence gathering missions over Ukraine and over the Black Sea over the past year or since the spring. So again, we're not seeing this public stuff, but the indication is that different governments have a lot of information that backs up what they're saying.
Yeah, and well, going back to what you said about like the reconnaissance flights, like you said, back in March and April, there was almost that we could see there was on like flight tracking sites. There was like almost daily flights of was it Global Hawks over eastern Ukraine, always flying like the same pattern. As well as I can't remember exactly what aircraft were in the Black Sea. I know there was a couple of P8s.
Yeah, we saw
Um,
some P8s, some SIGINT, so the river joint, and then also
oh yeah.
the radar emitter collection one, the combat sent the other one, that's been recently seen off Iran. It's also been
Yeah.
flying over the sea there, and EP3s or a version of the P3, I believe as well. It's
Hmm.
at one point that got intercepted.
Yeah, so there was, quite a lot of different aircraft observing, Crimea and Eastern Ukraine, and it was rare for in that kind of period between March and April for there to be a day when there wasn't some kind of NATO aircraft observing that region, um, and like, and that's when nothing happened. And what is really unusual again is now when things starting to be heating up again, it seems to be less common to see these aircraft in the Black Sea. They're still there, they are still there, but they definitely don't seem to be making as frequent flights um,
Or
as they
counterpoint,
were.
they aren't making
Or they
flights with
just,
ADSB on.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's the case.
That's
I
yeah.
think I saw a tweet from NATO the other week, that their Global Hawk, also from Singanella, flew a 24-hour Black Sea mission, and I don't think anyone reported seeing it on the trackers. Like they just completely
No.
turned off their stuff. But it flew for the NATO one. It was the first long endurance mission over the Black Sea,
Hmm.
and they fly out of Signal. They fly the same route the US ones do. Um, but no one saw it anywhere. So like it wasn't reported anywhere other than by NATO saying we flew a Black Sea mission.
Well, I was just going to say, usually when you see stuff start to happen without ADSB transponders on, especially, involving large aircraft, there's certainly an indication that they're not trying to make it easy for enemy forces to actually spot the aircraft before they're incoming and, give intelligence gathering sources or intelligence gathering assets more time on station to actually, hoover up signals intelligence before either, radars are turned off or, troops sort of disperse and move around. So there is that, and there is an indication that NATO and the U.S. may be trying to acquire some more accurate intelligence by not releasing ADSB locations. Um, but at this point, again, it's just that lack of movement that we've seen posted. So it's really hard to gauge at this point.
Yeah, I'm just looking on Flight Radar now. I'm just playing back today's activity to see if there's anything in the Black Sea, and so far it doesn't look like well, again, on Flight Radar at least, or on IDSB, it doesn't look like there's been anything in the region um, today. But like you said, it could be 50 aircraft there. We just if they don't have ADSB on, we're not going to see them.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey has their drones that I don't think I've ever seen pop up over the country itself, but we see the reports of them flying around and striking stuff and all that things, and we don't ever see them on the trackers.
Yeah, and that is a big thing as well. And of course, the arrival of new U.S. heavy bomber assets into the region with the deployment of both. I believe the rotation of new B2s in earlier in the summer, and then of course the B1s that have arrived as well just recently and have conducted some serious friendship flights. I think that's what they were called with NATO member countries. So there certainly is that indication that the U.S. is, I guess, prepared to sort of fight any buildup with buildup. I know there was a report from CNN that said the Biden administration was considering sending new weapons and advisors into Ukraine, which definitely sending U.S. military advisors serves as some sort of I guess, tripwire mechanism in case the Russians were to invade in any force. It'd be very hard to not get the U.S. involved at that point. So it's just this, I guess, trying to fight the buildup in the most non-inflammatory ways possible. Sort of taking a defensive stance in Ukraine without actually, doing things like deploying troops to Ukraine or inviting Ukraine to join NATO.
Yeah, that's a big thing, that Ukraine is still pushing for. But I think that most countries are hesitant because I think as soon as they will become part of NATO, they'll invoke Article 4, like within the next week, and
Yeah, the
everyone's going to
second
have to
that
deploy their troops.
their representatives won't even leave the NATO headquarters. They'll just invoke
Oh,
Article
exactly.
5
They already
immediately.
have.
Yeah.
They'll have the report written out and be like, "All right, we're in. Here's our first thing. There you go. We're invoking it.
Yep.
Come
This
send
goes
your
on top of
troops."
the inbox here. Here,
Yeah, I
defend
think,
us.
and yeah, looking at also flight activity, I'd just seen that a UK one of those BAE 146s flew to Kiev earlier, but I don't think that's really too significant. But
Those 146s are interesting because they can both serve cargo roles and they also frequently serve as transportation for both special forces, and then of course they ferry across your 3 stars and up across Europe and across
yeah,
member NATO countries. So there could be a huge number of things that could be doing. I would tend to
yeah, it's
think
similar to the US's
probably,
one.
yeah, I would tend to think diplomatic stuff, or at least
Mhm.
maybe military attaches moving around.
Yeah,
It's of course so unclear just because we don't know.
but yeah, definitely.
And I
And
definitely remember seeing more on a few of those flights again during the last build up in March and April. Um, and then as things kind of cooled down, I didn't I didn't look out for them as much. So I personally I've got no really kind of benchmark of how common these flights were into Ukraine. Um,
I think the ones that were really common was the Global Hawk. I think that flew almost daily missions. They even at some point had them come over from Al Dafra. They flew all the
mhm.
way over from Al Dafra all the way to the Black Sea and over mainland Ukraine to observe buildup.
we saw the
I think
RC
that was the
135s as well.
mainstay. Oh
The,
yeah,
the
yeah.
the
Those
rivet
those two.
joints we saw daily, sometimes twice daily missions utilizing both the RAF RC 135 and US RC 135s based out of both Greece and the UK at that time. So that was definitely
I
I
think
guess.
the mainstay nowadays has been Kaliningrad. We see daily RC-135s orbiting the area, as well as of course the two guardrails, those Army SIGINT ones, the prop lanes,
And the
along
E8s.
with bi daily E8s. I don't think I've not seen them daily recently. They were flying daily at one point,
Yeah,
but they've gone down a little bit, at least on the trackers, so to
yeah,
say.
and of course other uh
Oh yeah, the Swedish have
intelligence
flown
rather, yeah,
there.
the
Yeah, I've
Swedes.
seen the Swedes.
So
I don't
they're
know what the
definitely,
UK P8s have been going through the north of Denmark. I don't know if they've gone further than that or just kind of training off Denmark and Norway.
yeah. I mean,
But
I think the focus right now is Ukraine, just because again, all the other countries that Russia could potentially threaten, or that are on the border of Belarus that could also be threatened, are NATO member countries, which again Ukraine isn't. So there isn't that whole immediate stopgap um, sort of agreement in place for those countries. It's just I Putin believes that he can take, or potentially take, portions of Ukraine without any sort of NATO intervention, because he's done it before and gotten away with it, and nothing happened, or nothing significant happened. And I think he feels like there's a potential that Russia has some sort of leverage over Europe, so he could potentially stave
Mhm.
off any sort of NATO intervention into Ukraine, because Ukraine isn't a member nation, by threatening oil supplies, as Europe is already fairly stretched right now, especially for natural gas. I'm not sure European countries could make it through the winter without Russian natural gas or oil.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
issue with.
Well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting you mentioned the like gas and oil in that. Didn't Russia just give Moldova a deadline of yesterday, I believe it was, to pay some debt to, I want to say, Gazprom, um, and they gave them like a 48-hour deadline, or they were going to cut off gas and oil supplies to Moldova. Um, Obviously, the interesting thing about Moldova is, Transnistria has quite a sizable Russian um, presence, their Russian military presence. Um, which I'm not going to say Russia's going to invade Moldova over an oil debt, but
No,
I
but
think
is that whole
they're more looking to gain a foothold out of it. I think they can. It's
mhm.
another front they can pressure Ukraine on in that sense, and because it's a completely opposite of they've got the Black Sea right there, and then Moldova is a good. Well, yeah, like I said, it's a good place they can either use as a distraction or start provoking the regions around there. We got some not so much big cities, but they have a piece of land that is running towards the Crimea that is a decent bit of kind of almost cut off by Moldova. That is Ukrainian.
Yeah, well, some people, I mean, I don't personally much agree with the assumption, but some people are kind of thinking that Odessa could be a target for Russia, the city of Odessa, which is obviously right next to Moldova there. Um, if I have to make a guess, like Mariupol is by far the biggest city that if hostilities did kick off again, um, that would be the main goal for Russia and their proxies in eastern Ukraine. It's a
yeah,
port
the
city. It's sizable.
well, not
It's
just that,
it, it, and
it's the Crimean Canal issue is one of the big motivators for Russia, and I still
Mhm.
think that my thesis on that somewhat holds true. Of course, it's been lessened since rainy season, in fall, and somewhat in the winter as well. So we'll see less pressure on the reservoirs in Crimea, but the Russians are definitely under some sort of pressure to open up a separate line of water supply into Crimea, as they haven't been exactly really been able to fill all of the water needs over the past couple of years there. So that's definitely one of the motivating factors. It may also just be taking advantage of a chance that's come up, as the U.S. is distracted in other places like China, especially with China acting more aggressive towards Taiwan. Would the U.S. get stuck in to defending Ukraine?
I can't see it personally.
I
I can't
think
see any NATO member getting into a shooting war with Russia over Ukraine.
I don't know. I'm kind of the thing with Taiwan is it's mostly going to be naval, and while the Ukraine is the majority is going to be land based, and Taiwan is more air force slash navy, since there's not a lot of land to defend on Taiwan's case, unless you're planning on invading mainland China, which is, I don't think, something the US will ever do.
I think the
Um,
assumption is that a shooting war would not just be limited, between Russia and NATO in Ukraine. I think the assumption is that it would not continue to be like that. Which, as doomer as we want to be about something like that, of course, if Russia and NATO were to decide to go at it in Ukraine, I don't think any of us think that it would be limited to that area.
oh no, definitely. They'll see some hotspots. Maybe well, we got both the Baltic states and then the Caucasus region that
Yeah,
Mhm.
are they're pressure points, let's so to say. But they can be turned into more active zones quite quickly if Russia really wanted to.
yeah. I think it's something that has the risk of devolving much more quickly than a lot of people think. It would not be a limited conflict if the U.S. and Russia were to get involved with each other.
Oh no, oh no.
It's just hard to guess at this point. I think maybe it's all just posturing again from Russia and ends up being a false claim. I think it's just kind of hard to predict at this point.
Yeah, I'm
Given what they've been doing over the last couple of years, with like building up, drawing down, building up, getting everyone like kind of spooked almost, and then just not doing anything.
yeah. Just to make my thinking clear here, I do believe that this is, as of right now, just posturing. Just because we haven't seen really the movement to back it up, and we're mainly just seeing statements from various European and powers, the U.S. and Russia. And actually, one of the key things, and I'll have to get my French bashing in for the episode, but Macron saying that France would defend Ukraine unequivocally definitely makes me think that there isn't an actual risk to Ukraine. Um, just for someone like Macron to come out and make a statement like that sort of makes me think that he doesn't think he'll have to actually back it up.
I don't know. The French are pretty can be pretty, how to say. I'm looking for the word here.
Feisty.
They're, yeah, they're pretty up in there. Like their heart lies within Europe. Like they're pretty tough for when it comes to stuff in Europe. They want.
Mhm.
I feel that's how it feels like. The European look at their industry in terms of weapons and all that stuff. It's all very European focused, or that is trying to, and then
And
that's why
they
I.
even faced off with Turkey a little while back, didn't they? I don't think it was this year. It might have been last year. I think there was some pretty harsh words traded between Turkey and France. I can't remember exactly what it was over now. Probably sounds ridiculous, but there was definitely a concern, shall we say, that there could have been an incident between those two.
Yeah, I just don't think the French government would sort of pin themselves into a corner over something like that.
Oh no,
If there
no,
was
I
truly a
agree.
massive threat of it happening. So that's again, I could be completely wrong, and I've prefaced a lot of my statements with this, but that's just an explanation of my current thinking. It's the lack of that we've seen posted online and posted through sources, and then just that the statements we're seeing generally indicate to me that like countries don't believe they'll actually have to back up any sort of Russian aggression with force. Um, but yeah, and then of course there's the other side of countries may be afraid that Russia is prepared to cut off European oil supplies. So
Yeah, I mean, my kind of assumption of if anything does happen is it's going to be Russia using their proxies more than anything else in the offensive. I can't see there being a large scale invasion. Um, I think if anything does happen, it will be their proxies that start the push. Russia might, like they did in 2014, 2015, I say might, I think they probably will, support with artillery fire from inside Ukraine, inside Russia, sorry. Um, they shot down at least one Ukrainian aircraft, allegedly, with a system from inside Russia. So I think that's more than likely what will happen to begin with, at least. Um, and another reason I'm starting to think that is I don't know if you've seen the video I posted on Twitter in the last hour or so of what is claimed to be from Crimea, but it looks like I haven't looked at it. I don't think it's a T9. I think it's almost certainly a T-72. Um, but that's been equipped with
Oh God.
you
So
know, like slat
let me.
armor, but
Oh,
slat
okay.
armor, yeah, like
The bar,
anti-javelin armor,
the
can we say?
bars, the bars and stuff. Oh, I
Yeah,
see what you
so
mean.
The
Yeah,
yeah
I see your tweet.
the shape charge cages.
yeah, but
The shape charge defensive armor.
it's clearly designed for
Top down, preventing top down
top-down
attacks.
attack. Yeah, preventing top-down attacks, which, considering Ukraine have recently got Javelin ATGMs, which have the capability of that, it seems like a little more than a coincidence to me that they've now suddenly. Um,
Wait,
and
is it?
in the replies to my tweet there, someone's posted an article saying, as far back as July this year, Russia started fitting their tanks with these kind of cages, almost kind of in a panic, just very quickly welding bars to the top of the tanks, like it didn't seem planned at all. Um,
Wait, is that a T
and
seventy
obviously
two
that,
or a T80?
I honestly, I honestly can't tell.
God,
They all
man.
look pretty much the same to me at this point.
It's
The
like
best
a
way to tell Russian or Soviet tanks is always by looking at the road wheels, I found. But of course, this video is from front on, so
yeah.
this is no way of
Usually
seeing the road wheels.
what I'm used to is by the shape of the turret, but unfortunately, basically by now, pretty much every single Russian tank in their inventory has some level of explosive reactive composite armor just sort of slapped on, which makes identification really difficult because it seems like every single application on every single tank is in some way, shape, or form unique. Like it legitimately looks like mechanics have just gone, super glue onto every single tank, just slapping on ERA blocks.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I can't tell if that's a normal kind of like lamp or if it's one of those. I forget the name of the Russian system that they put on the T90s more than anything else.
Oh,
The active
the
protection.
terms, active protection. No, that's not a terms. Um, no, that's an IR. That's an IR spotlight for a night vision
Oh
system,
yeah,
which actually would indicate that
yeah.
this tank is not equipped with thermal sights, which would shoot. I'm trying to forget. Did T80 have thermal sights? Honestly, we're gonna post this video, and someone's like gonna immediately identify what it is, and I'm gonna feel like
Oh
an
yeah.
Oh
absolute
yeah,
moron.
they're gonna be like, no man, it's a T60.
A T60 with extra stuff.
Yeah. No, but I mean that's what I'm
Just
saying. So it seems that these kind of that kind of protection is only really useful against two things: against javelins or similar,
well, I even
or
wonder how
drones,
I
the
even wonder
Turkish drones.
how well it will hold up against a javelin, given that
Oh, nothing.
they probably too also have some form, at least in this stage now, some sort of penetration capability, and will
Oh
probably
god.
slice straight through.
Well, like I said, so the article I was reading, it said a lot of them were they weren't like officially put on. It was kind of like individual like commanders and tank crews deciding to just weld these bars of metal to like the roofs of their own tanks.
Yeah.
Um, like almost, like what you kind of seen in Syria from from the groups there. But between that and also the article today of there was two Russian industries. I want to say one of them was coal and the other one might have been steel. I'm probably completely wrong there. But both of them are now complaining they're having issues moving their product because the train lines are so clogged up. Um, which is interesting considering that you can make the assumption or make the connection maybe that we've seen a lot of movement of Russian equipment on trains in recent weeks. Um, and now you've got these kind of industries complaining that they can't move their product because the train lines are backed up. You have to wonder. We're not seeing that many videos, but how much equipment really is getting moved for for it to cause such an issue in
Yeah.
a country like that.
But I mean, then again, it makes you wonder, why are they publicly stating it? It's almost like it's psyops
Mm,
at this point, Like, just to give an analogy, like kind of outside the defense world, it's the same if any you watch Formula One. You see Mercedes saying this, oh, we're terrible, we're super slow, and then the next day they drive fastest lap and win the race
Yeah,
by like a huge margin.
The
It's just
purposeful the
obscene. Yeah,
sandbagging. Yeah.
exactly.
sandbagging. Yeah.
It's like
Um,
you wouldn't say that publicly if there's like I can't see them saying that publicly if and then giving like in this case quote unquote giving away huge movements over rail by their main contractor, the Russian and military of defense.
Yeah. And
no,
see that's
exactly.
the kind of stuff that like if we were seeing that plus videos of movement, I would think that it would just be the Russians, don't have control over, the media environment. They don't have control over social media. Their OPSEC is really terrible. But then you see both messages like that getting out, but then no, absolutely or almost no Russian social media posting, and you sort of like the two things can't be true. The Russians can't be like completely or nearly completely suppressing social media and also allowing, various companies to issue press releases and, complain about these things.
No, exactly. And I've just found the article I was referring to. Um, yeah, so it's the Russian. It's a Russian steel association and a petroleum giant. And what's interesting is the newspaper reporting it, the Russian newspaper, is normally seen as quite. They're not a government mouthpiece, should we say? Like I've seen a lot of Russians who are in favor of the government. They don't like it. This commissant, I'm probably pronouncing that horrifically. Um, but funnily enough, I got into an argument on Twitter the other day with some Russian nationalist who was arguing black and blue that there were no Russians in Ukraine. Um, and I provided him with an article from this newspaper. And yeah, he said apparently a lot of Russians don't like them. They see them as like anti-Russian because they report things that the government doesn't like. Um, yeah, so it's the fact that it's this newspaper that's reporting these difficulties and not state media kind of swings it back towards more of a concern to me rather than it just maybe being psyops.
Yeah, possibly,
Because
but
if
I
if
mean,
it was
at
like
the same
RT, then
time,
I'd be like, yeah,
yeah, but at the same time, they would have to be suppressing like all of social media, but they can't suppress a single newspaper.
yeah, no, that is very true. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I mean, like looking back now, like like March and April, that definitely seems more like posturing than now does.
I mean, that's the thing,
Um,
with this day and age, you can't really do anything in secrecy over land, at
mhm.
least anymore, because everyone just has cell phones these days, and there's always people that in anyone's country that don't support whatever their government is doing. Will just be taking pics because they think it's cool. Oh, it looks like a nice train and whatever. So I think it's really hard to do, at least in this day and age, a build up without your enemy already knowing about it days in advance because of social media these days.
Yeah, and
no,
that's
exactly. I
that's
mean,
a
because
that's a big
they
one.
could move at night, I suppose.
I mean, you have to do it at night, and then even then, yes, it's a bit more easygoing because most people will then generally be asleep. But still, you're not going to be able to move 80 to or 80 like 80 plus tanks across the railway without someone catching an eye of it if you're going
Oh yeah,
from
no.
Russia all the way into Ukraine.
But I'm sure as well. So obviously we had the build up again back in March and April, and a lot of equipment was moved to that training ground north of Ukraine. Um, but then I remember the soldiers left, but the equipment didn't. From what I remember, the equipment stayed there, did it not? So could that not also account for why we've not seen as many trains? Is a lot of it just they haven't had to move it in; they've just left it there, such as like the bases in Crimea as well. Not a lot. Obviously things moved in, but did everything move out
Oh
at the
yeah,
end of
that's
those
true.
what they call
May-
exercises?
yeah, maybe we are thinking too much in a US term where they always move all their equipment with their battalion and just swap everything out instead of leaving stuff for the next. I don't know if Russia's like the
Yeah.
same. If you see every what's that year and a half right now actually like one of the US's air cavalries is with going back to the US and all their helicopters are flying through the Netherlands, going out via ship back to the US and new stuff will get shipped in. instead of them just leaving their birds here and then handing it over, they'll just bring their own equipment to and from, which is a
Yeah,
very US thing to do.
I suppose there's advantages and disadvantages to both ways of doing it.
Well, I mean, if there isn't equipment there in the first place, you're going to have to bring it in. Period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Oh yeah, but like Carl said, they already brought it in earlier this year, and if they haven't brought it back, and they're just adding a couple tanks here and a couple things there, then it's a little bit easier to manage than bringing in those 80 plus pieces of armor.
no, exactly. And
Yeah.
I think additionally, I forget who it is. Sorry, just got to look this up real quick. There is an account who has been, thank God, purchasing Sentinel synthetic aperture radar imagery of the staging areas in Russia that are near the Ukrainian border. And I just will have to preface this by the fact that the satellite radar imagery can be spoofed. It can be fooled with by deflectors on the ground and different types of jamming methods, but it sort of looks like the Russians are starting to assemble more vehicles into various motor pools in the staging grounds, but it still isn't like a massive buildup that's visible, at least on satellite right now.
No, yeah. I mean, like the satellite imagery it blows my mind that I know obviously you can't pay for it, but it blows my mind that just any of us can go on and just look at free
Oh yeah,
recent
definitely.
satellite imagery of most places on the planet. It's crazy. Um, and going back to what you said earlier, technical about the water issue in Crimea, I remember again going back to March, April. Um, I looked at some satellite imagery of like one of the biggest reservoirs in Crimea, and it was dry. They were having major issues at that time. There was next to no water in it. Um, so it's definitely a concern. And just looking at a map, I mean, where that dam is that Ukraine have built, it's without getting the measuring tool out, I can tell you, but I want to say it's like 10 to 15 kilometers from the Crimean border, and that's no distance. That's no distance at all. They could destroy that dam without leaving Crimea with just conventional artillery if they wanted to. Um, I don't know if they would though, because just shelling a dam just seems like you can create a bigger dam with rubble. Um, but it would definitely be no effort at all to Russia to take that small step into Ukraine and take control of that dam if water was a big issue for them. I forgot what I was going to say. But albeit uh, in the last half hour or so, I've just seen that the State Department spokesman has said U.S. support of Ukraine isn't just rhetoric. Rhetoric's important, but also security assistance we provided, noting 400 million committed since start of Biden admin, which is a lot of money.
Well, it's not just
But
money; it's also hard supplies like arms and ammunition. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
that's a
mhm.
huge asset for the Ukrainians, for the U.S. to be providing them with.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But
no,
yeah, we
definitely.
saw a large shipment of ammo coming into Ukraine end of last week, I think. It was via one of the civilian cargo contractors from the US.
Yes,
Oh
flew out
yeah,
of Dover Air
they
Force
like
Base.
80
Yeah,
million rounds of ammunition or something like that, wasn't it?
yeah.
So it's just some weird number.
A very huge amount, yeah, I think like a couple pallets with all these crates.
Yeah. And also today as well, if we're talking about like things that are like kind of escalating, that Ukraine admitted that they've used the Javelin missile today for the first time. They didn't say when or where it happened, but they said it was used. Um, I imagine it happened probably fairly recently, considering when they used the TB2 for the first time. I think they announced it same day, didn't they? Or at least maybe 24 hours later. It was very, very quick that they announced that they, used their new toys. So, I mean, I don't know why they've used the javelin. I mean, it's like I'm guessing they've just maybe fired it at maybe an outpost or a trench line or something like that, just to maybe use it, test it, whatever. Um, but the more um, kind of little escalations like this happen, like the use of the drone, the use of javelins, when they moved into, so-called, like no man's land and took like a village that wasn't defended, but very slightly changed the front line a few weeks back, probably maybe a month or so back, even longer, I can't remember. But they seem to be making like seems to be small escalations every couple of weeks or so. Um, and even if Russia themselves don't act, I feel like something is bound to happen. Like I don't think that the conflict isn't sustainable in its current form to just you know especially for any kind of president, having your soldiers die um several times a week. It's not it's not sustainable for anyone who wants to stay president for more than one term. Um, yeah, so I think something's going to happen. Like a full scale Russian invasion, I doubt it. But I feel like definitely there's going to be an attempt by one side or the other to try and regain some land.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think
and
if anything's going to happen from the Russian side, we're probably going to see some sort of escalation during the winter, just because that is the time that Russia has sort of this stranglehold over most of Europe with their natural gas and oil supplies. I
mhm.
mean, if the Russians weren't to take advantage of that, that would be like China trying to invade Taiwan during typhoon season. It's not a
Yeah,
good idea.
no,
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely. Like the whole, yeah, that's the issue with a lot of Europe being dependent on Russia. We can send all the troops we want, but as soon as they cut off the gas, then we're all kind of effed.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, winter in Europe is also the not typhoon season in Asia. So take from that what you may, but and I know this is one of those crackpot ideas that everyone's been throwing around, or correction, pretty much just me at this point. Of
Oh yeah,
Russia
that's
and
true.
China attempting to do some sort of joint uh, sort of action both against Ukraine and Taiwan at the same time, which would absolutely split the US's focus. And as we saw during Afghanistan, the US has a finite number of strategic airlift tools, which could definitely be impacted by trying to manage two things at once.
oh no, definitely. Um, and that's probably a good segue. I don't know if we want to discuss it much or not, but the uptick in U.S. aircraft over Europe at the moment. I don't know
Oh Lord.
if anyone wants to speculate on that one.
Well, yeah, we've seen definitely a an increase in reach call sign, which is Air Mobility Command, going somewhere. In that we've seen them basically
And that's all
popping
we
up.
know so far.
We've seen them popping up over Europe and then dropping off over southeastern Europe and Turkey. Um,
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have no
didn't
idea
one
where
of
they're going.
I think someone mentioned it yesterday. I think I saw it in the tweet of the I'm not sure both of you are in the Mata Osint one. Um,
Hmm.
they're all going to Djibouti. Pretty much all of them have been routing to Africa over the Red Sea. Um, most going through Ramstein, and a couple going through what's that, Rhoda slash Moron. Well, I think mostly Rhoda at this point.
Or they're hooking
Um,
up with aerial refueling assets flying out
oh
of
yeah,
from Spain as well.
yeah, through Strait of Gibraltar and then going. But yeah, they've all been going in and out of Djibouti for like 90% of the flights. And now I just saw your tweet about the UN also withdrawing their people from Ethiopia. Um, so it seems that there's some stuff going on down south in Africa as well.
Yeah, and I think actually that's probably a good time as sort of we talk about how the U.S. Potentially wants to respond to Ethiopia, and whether or not the U.S. is potentially planning another Afghan style airlift from Ethiopia, maybe, but probably not.
So
Um,
I've missed this. What's been happening in Ethiopia? I haven't kind of. not seen much of that pop up on my timeline. I've kind of not had the time to dig into that much.
Uh, yeah. So we talked about this in the last podcast, but basically, the Ethiopian government forces are getting absolutely routed by the Tigray People's Liberation Forces from the north of the country, who used to be basically in control of the whole country until the new Ethiopian president was elected and sort of reformed things. But in the last couple of weeks since we've talked about that, the Tigrayan forces have continued to push south at a fairly quick speed. They're making very good progress against the Ethiopian government forces. They're sort of right now, at least according to the Ethiopian map, which is run by woofers, and I consider fair or very reliable. Currently, there are about four different different lines of offense down towards the capital of Ethiopia, and we're sort of seeing the Tigrayan forces continue to make good progress. Recently, actually, just just yesterday, the Ethiopian president just said he was leaving to lead his troops from the front line.
Oh yeah, I did
So
see
Oh,
that come
yeah.
that's
across.
definitely something you hear when your presidency is stable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's more than likely going to be. I mean, nothing's probably going to happen. But I mean, who was that president that did the same? Was it Chad? The president of Chad did the same thing and ended up getting killed. Was that this year?
Yeah, that was not too
Was it?
long ago. I think it was just before the summer.
Yeah, it was
I'll Google
Chad,
it.
right? I'm not getting the country wrong on that. I'm gonna have to wait. I'm gonna have to quickly fact check
Yeah,
myself on that
Chad's
one.
president Idris Deby dies after clashes with rebel. That was April this year.
Yeah, and I mean that came out of nowhere as well, didn't it? Like, I mean, he just suddenly like opened Twitter and I was like, oh, Chad's president's died, and I was like, that was crazy. But from what I could understand, like he was there as a kind of a PR thing. Like I don't think he was like right on the front line, was he? He was kind of a little bit back behind the front line. I don't know if he hit a mine or if they were ambushed or I don't know what happened there, but I don't think he was ever there to kind of lead his army as the Ethiopian president said.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like it wasn't. It's not. It was. He's not. I don't know how he ended up dying, but it wasn't in the same fashion as what, like you just said, Ethiopian president said.
No, exactly. Um, but so we're talking about like the airlift. Would there need to be a kind of Afghan style airlift for Ethiopia?
Sorry.
Like, so obviously one of the theories about the increase in US aircraft kind of heading out towards Djibouti, and people suggestion that maybe it was to do with Ethiopia and the UN pulling their staff out. Are there that many people that would need to be evacuated from Ethiopia that would require such a large operation?
No, no,
So
definitely, and it probably is more bringing in stuff than taking stuff out in this sense, at least
Oh
from
yeah, I
the
think you
US
could.
point of view.
but
There's
additionally,
still
we could see some sort of
military
humanitarian.
units deployed throughout Africa um, that we're not really allowed to. I'm not really allowed to talk about in sort of sense. Like there's we all kind of know there's people there, but we don't really know where they are and what they're doing. But it's pretty clear that there's still special forces on the ground.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, definitely.
It's not that I know anything more than we do, by the
you,
way, but it's just like,
you sounded so suspicious. You're like,
oh
oh,
yeah,
I can't talk
I
about
said it a
that.
lot more.
Oh no.
No, I said a lot more suspicious than it meant to be. Like we all know they're kind of there, but we also kind of don't know where is there, in that sense. But
Yeah.
Djibouti, it's the main one of the main hubs the US has in Africa, at least on that side of the continent. Because I don't think that they're not really active in Mali at all. It's more Europe/France. We also had the terror attack in the UK that might be worth talking about real
Yes,
quick.
we did. That was on. How
I
long
think
ago was
Wednesday.
that?
Was that Wednesday
I
last
was,
week?
yeah, I was on. Yeah, it was. It was the first day I went away. Um, so it looks like it was a failed suicide. Well, I say failed suicide bombing. Um, Luckily, the only person killed was the bomber in the attack, which was all mostly, well, I say mostly, it was almost entirely thanks to the taxi driver who drove the bomber in his car, realized he had a bomb on him, and locked him in the vehicle, which he then exploded in the car and killed
Yeah,
only himself and wounded the taxi driver.
it was Monday, by the way, last week. Just checked.
Was it Monday?
Yeah,
Wow.
15th of
Um,
November. It's been a week already. But what we did see afterwards was some. We saw, of course, obviously CTSFO. We also saw some UKSF on the ground,
mhm.
assisting armed police in, I believe, the arrests of were there 3 individuals.
Quite quickly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course,
Um,
Hereford is not that far away. You know, they have the helicopters, they have other means. I don't know if how you guys work differently than how we have it here with counterterrorism. You guys just have your CTSFO on like super short notice, and then the SCS is a bit more out of ways.
Honestly, it's not something I'm aware of. I don't know if technical. I don't know if you have very in-depth knowledge on British counter-terrorism policing.
I think John would have been the expert here.
Carry on. Something interesting I've just spotted about this bombing in Liverpool. Um, so the bomber, or presumed bomber, well, it was the only one that was killed. So the bomber, um, it says here he was Iraqi, um, but he converted from Islam to Christianity
That's
before.
that's a step.
Yeah, so his application for asylum was refused in 2014, um, and subsequent legal challenges rejected. The Home Office at the time of this article hadn't commented on whether it had ordered him to leave the UK. Um, and then it says since this period, he converted from Islam to Christianity and adopted a new name. Um, so it's really unusual. So I mean, I'm guilty of just kind of assuming the whole thing was, Islamic terrorism related. Um, but if he converted to Christianity, that's really, really unusual. Unless he,
Yeah,
unless he, unless he converted back, which it doesn't say. Um, but yeah, and even if he did it to try and, fool, fool the system, fool security services, um, it's quite an extreme step. And I don't know if I've heard of other kind of, you know, terrorists doing that.
no, I
Um,
mean, like it has been in a lot of cases, it was like terrorist attacks based on the Islamic religion. Not to say that all them are, definitely not.
mhm.
Um, but like you say, it's a bit of a weird step if you go from one to the other, and then you don't like looking at the facts. You just don't see it a lot, and that's not being trying to be racist. That's just
No,
actual
no.
facts. That it has been the majority has been terrorists based on the Islamic religions due to the nature of the war that had been going on for the past 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's really intrigued me though. The fact that he converted to Christianity. He doesn't say when, but I think I'm gonna maybe after this podcast later, I'm gonna do a bit more digging on that and find out, if there's been an update on exactly, if there was a motive, if what the target was or anything. Yeah, but
Yeah,
no, I'll definitely try and look into that.
I mean, yeah, like looking like
Um,
if you're going for something like a hospital, then I think at this point you're just going for the most casualties as possible because there's a lot of people on a very tight place, so to say. You'd like somewhere like a shopping mall as well. Those kind of are like, um,
yeah, and there was also a remembrance parade quite close to the hospital, which at the time I think was the kind of um, Yeah, I think people kind of almost ruled out the hospital as being a target and kind of assumed that this kind of remembrance parade, which um, was quite nearby,
Oh, yeah, it could have
was
been
the main
just a drop
target.
off to walk. Yeah,
Yeah.
both in least high are places where you could potentially cause a high count of casualties.
Yes. And it looks like we've got technical back. Technical, you there?
I have come back to a conversation that I was not expecting you guys to be making. Um,
which
I am,
which part did you come
am
back
I gonna
at?
have to do heavy editing of this episode?
No, no, no. I was
Probably
just
not.
saying I found an article on the the Liverpool bomber converted from
Oh
Islam to
yeah, yeah.
Christianity, which I thought was quite interesting. Considering I don't think there's been like a motive or a kind of confirmed target of the attack. Um, and I was just saying I thought it was quite unusual for. I mean, I don't know of any kind of attacks in which the attackers have
Yeah, I mean
converted religion.
it's really hard to ascribe any, motivations or anything with the lack of evidence we have. Um,
Hmm.
they're just, there isn't that much evidence in the entire situation. We have a few solid facts we know, and very little else, just due to the nature of the UK justice system. We probably won't have a lot of information for a while. I guess that's something we're probably just gonna have to wait for, and sort of see what comes out as it comes out.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. I was
Yeah.
just kind of caught off guard because again, I haven't. I mean, the attack happened or was stopped, luckily, shall we say? Um, and then, luckily because the attack was stopped as such, and the only casualty was the attacker. I mean, I personally, I didn't really follow up much on it. There was no reason as such to for me to kind of look into it that much. But yeah, I think I'm going to try and pay a bit more attention to this in the coming weeks and months to see if more details do come out. Because quite an uh,
Are
interesting kind of
I
fact.
have to ask this: Are you just stalling at this point so you don't have to talk about the F-35?
I
I'm,
think that's a good
well,
next
I
topic
was
in a
actually
second.
just, I
We're
was,
just sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was trying to think of what a good segue would be. Anyway, I was like, how do I change from this
No, just to
into
quickly note
something?
again on the SAS deploy, and there is a drive. It's because they were there on scene pretty quick, but then again, I didn't see any images of the helicopter coming in. Maybe they landed
Now
quite
you're
outside, but
stalling as well.
it's about a 2.5 3 hour drive from Hereford all the way up uh to Liverpool. So for how quickly they were, they might have been in the area or something, but because they were there a lot quicker than 3 hours after the incident.
No, yeah, not
Oh,
it. Yeah,
I'm sure they utilized air transportation.
They probably had
such
at that
as an
point.
F-35 would have got there in a lot quicker than 3 hours. The
Oh
F-35
yeah.
will go.
F-35 and a random Sea King to pick you up from the water.
Oh yeah. All right. Shall we segue to the F-35 then? Is that when we
Gonna have to, aren't we?
think we
Yeah.
might have to? Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Hey, you crashed
So
our beautiful plane.
not yours. It was the British one. Nothing American about it, except that it might have been made there.
Built in America, baby.
That's true. So like the crash site that we kind of, from what I saw, it was close to the entry and slash exit of the Suez Canal because it was kind of in the region of that. Has there been any more info released on it, or is it obviously probably very hush hush in
Yeah,
general?
all we really know, pilot survived, is uninjured, I believe. Martin Baker definitely loved to advertise that fact. Um, and yeah, that's
You'll
sort of
get a
where
nice high.
that's sort of where it stands right now. There's a recovery effort ongoing, that I believe the U.S. is assisting with, in order to keep certain other countries from acquiring an F-35. Um, But yeah, apart from that, that's pretty much what's going on.
Yeah, I haven't even seen any
Yeah,
uptick in traffic, or at least air traffic over the region in terms of look-in, security, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I'm sure they would absolutely have transponders off. I know the Queen Elizabeth is staying in the region
Have they?
to
I thought
protect the.
the CSG moved on because at least the Dutch ship was in Sicily and is now on its way back towards the pardon me Gibraltar Strait and then back to the Netherlands, um, along with the rest of the CSG.
Okay, they may have recovered the plane already then.
I mean, I don't see what the point is for the Queen Elizabeth to stay in the area because you got RAF Akrotiri nearby where you can launch F-30 your Eurofighters from. You have Incirlik with US planes
I mean,
if you
what you
absolutely
need
need
is
to defend.
you need surface assets.
Oh yeah, but like there's more in the region than just the CSG ships, right? The Brits already have other assets that are more permanently in the area than the CSG, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I do wonder what is actually on the surface there right now because AIS doesn't actually show that much in the area at the moment.
No, and then the other thing is you don't need uh, a large amount of military vessels. You need like recovery vessels, which I don't think are going to be military in that sense, because I don't think we have any. Neither the Dutch, the Brits, or the US have any military recovering like recovery ships for that kind of operations. They're going to be a civilian contract at one, but for
It's
like
military. It
yeah.
is there are I believe U.S. salvage ships that were operating to recover the wreck.
All right, there you go then.
which is what I didn't realize. That apparently, the wreck is over a mile below the surface, so that's gonna cause some issues in recovering it. Well, not issues, but
If you're
difficult.
desperate enough, it can
Yeah.
be
Um.
it can be gotten.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. So see, it says you. So obviously, like you, UK pretty quickly went to the US to help them recover the the aircraft. Um, of course, at times you have a paywall on the article I was trying to look up again because I'd seen it the other day. But I'm sure it mentioned that they were planning to use like remote control submersibles to recover the jet, which is pretty cool. Um, there's a Cold War incident I'm trying to think of in which didn't the US hire some billionaire to steal a reactor out of a sunken Russian sub or US sub? Am I
Shoot, the
remembering that right?
recovery of the shoot sorry, I am going to have to Google this real quick. I know what this is. It's called. Let me double check real quick. The recovery of the submarine K-120. In
That's
it
it.
was
Yeah. But if we again trying not to go off track too much again, um, back to the F-35. When was the last, apart from this one, obviously, when was the last incident involving an F-35? So obviously everyone knows they had, a lot of issues with development, didn't it? Um, so it seems, so
I
for
think that was
Wikipedia,
the most recent one
2020,
was a US one off the coast of
yeah,
Florida slash the south somewhere over there.
mm, yeah, so 29th September 2020, a US Marine Corps F-35B
Of
crashed in
course,
California after
the
colliding,
collision.
yeah, mid-air collision. Earlier in 2020, an F-35A crashed while landing.
Yeah, Eglin, that's Florida. That's the one I was I remembered.
And in 2019, um, I think was it a Japanese?
Yeah,
Is that JACF? That's
yeah, that's the
Japanese, right?
Japanese Air Self Defense Force.
Yeah. So there's been not insignificant number of incidents um, over the last 2 years or so. Um, Again, you two might have a better idea than me of comparable aircraft. I don't know, like whether that's Russian aircraft or 16s or whatever. Um, how often they have issues, or is the amount of losses that F-35 seems to be having, or seems to be suffering, kind of the norm, or is it unusual? Should I say?
So you're kind of hard to follow. Your mic is.
Yeah, I think you were breaking up with
Oh,
us there.
oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah, sorry. Um, what I was asking is, so over the last 4 years, there's been there's been four losses of F-35, should we say, over the last 4 years. And I was trying to ask you, is that normal for aircraft or like new aircraft like that, or is that out of the ordinary, which might kind of suggest a kind of deeper issue?
Yeah, I think, and I'm gonna look this up to confirm it. I think the F-16 had a lot in the beginning, a lot of incidents.
Okay,
See, the
yeah, that's
F-16.
more or less
Look at
what I
this.
was asking.
The F-16 has been involved in over 670 hull loss accidents since as of January 2020.
And when did they come into service, the F-16?
Let me have a look. Scroll up real quick. First flight was 74. Introduction and in service was in 78.
Okay,
But that's
so
670 losses over a total of 4,600 built.
well, I mean that's not an insignificant percentage, though, is it? Just,
Oh, I mean, just the other day, the
is
Greeks
that is
lost
that
an M.
US only, or is
No,
that
that's
total,
that's
Yeah,
or is
I
that?
would
total.
imagine that's not U.S. only.
No, that's total. And just the other day, the Greeks lost an F-35 over Greece after takeoff. That was last week as well. They
Wait,
I think there were like
F-16?
You
three.
mean F-16?
Yeah, sorry, F-16. There were like 3 plane crash incidents over the span of 1 week.
I mean, it
Last
happens.
week, then we had the F-35 one, we had the F-16 from Greece, and then I think there was another one, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, these things happen. It's not an unusual to see.
Yeah, and sometimes not even plane error; it's pilot error. So it can always be. Then it's regardless of whatever plane it is. If it's a pilot error, it could well happen with any plane.
Yeah, I mean, airliners built to be safety first. Military jets are not. It's just a reality.
You got that as
Yeah.
well. The most funny incident this year, well, funny quote unquote, was that Belgian F-16 that drove into a building at Leeuwarden Air Force Base in the Netherlands. It by accident kicked into afterburner and drove into a building. The pilot ejected and was unharmed, luckily, but the F-16 was a loss.
I mean, there was also that Ukrainian pilot that drove his car into a jet. They were both on the ground. That was an interesting one. Um, yeah, and I suppose, again, like luckily, the pilots again in the most recent loss, the British F-35. Again, he ejected safe, was picked up fine. I'm not sure if he was injured at all, but luckily he absolutely survived. Um, and it reminds me of um, this year again. Kind of looping it back towards Russia. I swear Russia had two incidents very, very close together in aircraft in which their ejector seats malfunctioned whilst on the ground, and just unexpectedly fired when the pilot was preparing to take off, or was just not even preparing to take off, just kind of getting everything ready, and the ejector seats activated. And I remember looking at it, I can't remember what aircraft it was, but that aircraft, the one that had the ejector seat malfunction, had quite a high um, rate of hull loss as well. So it's definitely not just an American issue by any stretch.
No, no, definitely. I mean, we've not seen much Eurofighter or Gripen from Saab losses, but
I mean,
then
there
again,
are
there's also
less
a
of
lot
them.
less out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. There's just generally a lot less of them.
I mean, at this point, I believe there are less than F-35s at this point. Yeah. So, you know,
Yeah, take it that way you will.
the shit-eating grin on my face right now can be heard.
I mean, we've seen on the F-35, Spain has now become interested in both the A and the B model. They have officially requested information from Lockheed Martin
I mean,
for both.
what else are they gonna do to replace their Harriers? Come on. You have a
Yeah,
Harrier,
no,
you get the
and the Hornet.
F-35B. Period. End of
Yeah,
story. There's
and
no other planes.
exactly. There's no other VTOL available, so they're looking for F-35As to replace their Hornets, and then Bs to replace the Harriers, and then also maintain their Eurofighter fleet with a big upgrade package. They don't want to get rid of that because they are fans of that, so to say.
Saab vigorously trying to make the Gripen a VTOL plane.
I don't know. Saab is Saab. You know, they were a car company once, and then they're not anymore. They're just two planes, but they don't have
Wait, so they don't
hope.
have cars anymore?
I don't think they do.
No, they
Saab
don't.
is kind of they've quit cars like 5+ years
2009,
ago, I believe.
I believe
So
it
no,
was
there you go.
2009.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
No, but like there's now I think it was the Czech Republic that was leasing Gripens, and are also now looking towards F-35s. Let me find it because one of the defense article writers wrote about it.
Yeah, I know there's some
Um,
issues with the Swiss F-35 deal because apparently documents were destroyed or something. But
I
we'll
know the
see
thing
where
is
that
in
goes.
the thing in Swiss is that the country the inhabitants of the country have to vote on it. Like here it is, all our defense people and all that stuff. They kind of lobby for it and all whatnot. But in Swiss, there's actually like some sort of like a referendum, but with all the civilians, like everyone has to vote on that kind of issue, because the F-35, well, it's a lot of money, obviously. But yeah, so there've been things with that a lot of people were not um, agreeing with the decision. Like the vote for the F-35, I think it passed with like very marginally. Um, there were because people were complaining it's loud and all that stuff and whatnot. But it's just a weird thing how they do things like that in Swiss with like having their whole country involved in these kind of procurements.
Okay, so yeah, they're going to have an absolute massive public fight over it.
Pretty much, I think it's currently off the table as well. I'm not sure anymore.
That
Like,
sounds like fun.
yeah.
All right, so does anyone have any news stories they want to talk about specifically?
Well, I don't know if you all want to talk more about aircraft or something else.
Well,
Because
we don't have John here to do a news rundown, and I'm a bit too lazy to do it for him.
all right.
Hey, don't criticize me here.
No, there
I'm
was
not, I'm
just.
not criticizing, just silent judgment.
Oh yeah, it's all silent, of course.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I can hear you doing it.
No. I will say just one more thing on Ukraine. I've just had a look at the latest OSCE report, which came out in the last half hour or so. Um, and they have at the end they always have like a table of military and military type presence in the security zone, which is just the section that's designated as the kind of war zone, I guess, in eastern Ukraine. Um, and I've noticed they've spotted, which is the first time I've seen it, an electronic warfare system south of Donetsk. Um, I'm just going to have a quick look and see if it's in government or non-government controls, because I mean, it's an interesting development, regardless. That electronic warfare systems are being moved towards the front. It looks to me like it's going to be in government-controlled Ukraine. Yeah. just east of Mariupol. So I'm going to look into that a bit more in a little bit, and presumably I'll stick a tweet out, and maybe we can discuss it on next episode. Yeah, but the fact that they moved, these electronic warfare system up definitely means they're concerned, I guess, about what Russia might try, because it's not going to counter anything the separatists have. If they typically believed anyway. Um, but yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to mention just before we finish, unless anyone else has anything else.
I think that is actually it for me this week.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
I mean, I can just talk about planes for hours, so.
Go quick. That's the end of the show. Bye.